This is Kyle Stoffers. He's going to talk to us about Smudge.
Hi.
Why did you pick Smudge?
I picked Smudge because it was an insanely funny play that also dealt with like heavy themes, and that's kind of like how my humor is I deal with really like particularly like horrible like things that happen in my life, and I just kind of laugh it off, and things I approach it from a direction that is like fun and lighthearted, and it's kind of a defense mechanism, which is probably not healthy. But I I find that it's very useful for for helping to cope with like terrible things that happen in our lives.
What was the biggest discovery you made while working on script analysis?
Oh God. I don't know if this is a discovery per se, but I think that like the main thing that I knew when I started like reading through the script is that it was very easy for Colby to be read as being like just a huge bitch, and that there wasn't any like compassion there. But in reality, I think that her character is a lot more about like how she's like that's her own coping mechanism, and that like something so terrible has happened to her that like the only way that she knows how to deal with it is through like this overt like anger and aggression towards her husband and ultimately her baby as well.
What changed once you had your show cast?
A lot changed. I didn't necessarily know who I wanted to cast. I didn't go into casting thinking I'm going to cast these certain people. There were a couple of people I had in mind, but they were off the table, and so it was kind of like a whirlwind experience casting the show in itself, because there were so many like different directions that I could go. I mean, like especially Pete, like I had like three completely different people like in mind for him, and I mean even in the casting room, Drew Vidal was like, those are all completely different people. I was like, I know, but it's just because the show is so like human and versatile that like I think that really could work with almost anyone. But ultimately like the people that I chose, I think, were the best people available to tell this story. So I think the main thing that changed once I casted this show is that like I brought in these like three other strange human beings that were all they all had their own like different takes on like what the characters were doing and thinking, and actors amaze me literally. They're so creative and so innovative, and they think of the craziest things. And I think that a lot of the show is because they're inhabiting these characters. I couldn't have done it without them. So.
What was the biggest challenge you faced?
Oh God, the biggest challenge I think would have to be the technical elements. Well, I guess there's probably two. I think probably also dealing with the actors that like had completely different visions, and kind of I had to rein them in. So that was a big one. But again, like just the technical elements, the tech is very important to the show. The Smudge character, the baby, exists in this carriage that scripturally has to do all these different things, like light up and make sounds and react to Colby, because it's a character essentially, and as Colby like descends into madness a little bit from her trying to cope with the baby not responding at all. Like that was, I think, the biggest challenge, because we didn't have the tech throughout the entire rehearsal process, and so it was very hard to convey exactly like what that character, what Colby herself was like feeling and encountering in this situation. So those were our major hurdles that we made, and I think we clearly cleared it once we introduced some of the tech elements. So, I think everything worked out for the best. So.
And what was the biggest thing you learned?
The biggest thing I think I learned is that you can never be more familiar with the script. I think that I was very familiar with the script. I've been with it for almost 2 years now at this point. I found the play during the summer between my freshman and sophomore years, and then I eventually submitted it, and it got selected for my K production now here in the spring. But there were still things that I had missed, and then we got into the rehearsal room, and the actors brought new things, and then, oh, this is a really funny moment that I didn't entirely like realize was funny at all. And then like, oh, like this thing is way more heartbreaking than I thought it was. Like, and so we reworked everything that I had initially thought about the play. But like, I think maybe if I had been more familiar with the script, perhaps I would have covered those on my own. But I don't necessarily think that that's a good or a bad thing. I think it's kind of like a middle. It's like a crossroads there. I think the biggest thing I learned was that the actors bring everything to the play. I mean, obviously I'm there to guide them, but it's ultimately them that have to put the show on. It's them who have to climb onto that stage and interact with inanimate objects and things like that. So, I mean, it was an amazing process, and I think I learned that actors are the most amazing people on the planet. If that's like a real thing to learn, I don't really know.
This has been Kyle Stoffers talking to us about Smudge.
Thanks.